So there should be a little blinky light and we're recording. Okay, so this is the web recorder training session and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And folks, let me know if they can see that okay once I share. Okay, so you should see a web recorder.
Yep.
Okay, great. So if people have had a chance to sign up for an account for web recorder, if you haven't yet, that's totally okay. I'm going to walk through a couple of baseline things here. But what web recorder is a free tool to collect websites. So I'm gonna log out here really quick so you can see what it looks like when you come to sign up. So it's just webrecorder.io. I've put a link in the notes here too that we have. And anybody listening to the recording, I will also share some of those notes. So when you go there, it says create free account. You get up to 5 gigabytes of storage. And I do think for the purposes of our groups here at the library, creating an account where you register is probably the best approach because it gives you a lot more tools to work with. You see there's an option down here about the desktop app. This is really for people who are doing this for their own collecting, so I do encourage people to create the registered account, and you can do that with your UVA email, nice and easy. And so I'll go ahead and log in here to my account. So once you have an account, you can just log in with your username and password that you've created. You can choose whether you want it to remember you. It'll log you out a little bit more quickly if you don't tick that, but again, that's up to your discretion. So what you're seeing now, once you enter into Web Recorder, this gives you a couple different options. So if there's anything that kind of comes up for folks when they first start looking at this, mine's a little different than what you'll see because I've been using this as a tool for kind of recording and capturing web archives or websites that are important. And I know some of the work that we're all maybe going to be doing in future, you may be asked to what we call crawl, which is really record a website. And this kind of shows some of the work I've done on that in the past. So what you're seeing in blue are all collections. So when you sign up, there's this thing called a default collection where I believe this will be created for you and it kind of gives you an idea of where to start. The one I'm going to look at, this is something I've created and named myself. And so again, we'll probably have some more, kind of sessions and maybe get-togethers about what we might want to call it. But for me, when I created a new collection, I just went ahead and named it what I've been titling this collection. And it's okay if you want to change names, if you need to set something up to start, that's okay. You can always go in and edit the collection name. So that's kind of the first thing. You log into your account and then you want to start a new collection because creating a collection allows you to kind of gather everything in one place. It's easy to share with people that way. So again, if we're kind of doing work that's building on each other, we want to make sure that people know that what we're doing, this is a good way to kind of get that organized for yourself. So for me, I've named this collection UVA Coronavirus 2020 and just added a brief collection description here, and you can name it whatever you like. Just kind of giving yourself and others who are maybe looking at it a little bit of information. So what I've been crawling in this collection is a mix of UVA materials as well as broader Virginia information as requested by Dan and Emily, who are leading the collection effort on this. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and, save your collection and think about, maybe starting a crawl. So what we say when we say crawl, that's kind of a term that people use when they're talking about web archives, because if folks are familiar with, maybe how Google crawler indexers work, it's just the name of kind of a crawler software or bot that'll go out and systematically walk through web pages, saving things. So if folks are familiar with the Internet Archive, Heritrix is what they call their quote crawler. So that's the software they use to go in and index and crawl and save web pages. So for us, I'm going to take a quick look here. You're going to see now a spreadsheet that we've been working on, and I'm going to use one of these as an example. of a URL that you can crawl. And for a lot of folks, again, if we're all kind of working on similar things, there may be websites or URLs that people ask or request be crawled. Those may come from Emily, those may come from Dan, or maybe Elizabeth on the academic side, because we're trying to kind of focus on what we're crawling and where it goes to be part of a kind of specified collection around this stuff. So to start doing a crawl, what you want to do, you see this on the left here, it says new session. And what that will do when you click on it is give you kind of this blank space. So if you look over here on the left, it says use current browser. And that's simply because WebRecorder for different reasons actually allows you to use past versions of browsers, but we're going to stay in our current web browser because that's okay, what we need for the content. These past or other browsers are sometimes used for older web content where maybe there's software that is now outdated that can run in these. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to use the current browser. You can see here in the middle where it says ready to add a new capture. This is just telling you this is the collection you're in and what you're crawling is going to be saved in that collection. So that's really useful. If you are sometimes working in more than one collection you've created, you want to make sure that your web archives go under the umbrella that you have designated. So what you'll see over here on the way right is a button that just says capture. And you don't need to worry about clicking that because as you see, when I drop in, here's the URL I was assigned in a spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and just drop that full thing in there. And you can either then click capture with your mouse, or you can just hit enter. And you'll see when I hit enter, this immediately has switched to capture with a red button. And it shows you on the left here the amount of data that is coming in for that capture. And you know, 5 gigabytes is a fair amount in a free account, so don't worry about the amount that you're capturing for the time being. 5 gigabytes takes a while to get to. I've been using this account for a while, and I think I'm only about 1 gigabyte in the biggest collection that I've done so far. So this is telling you how much you're capturing right now. The middle, again, is showing this main link that I started with. And then on the right here, you'll see this is now changed to autopilot. And again, that's something we don't necessarily need to cover today, but what this does when you click it is automatically enact a scroll action. So I think a lot of people are probably familiar now with websites that kind of load dynamically. So the more you scroll, the more it loads. This autopilot feature is supposed to help with that. So you don't have to sit there as a human and scroll, 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 scroll. It will do it for you. But we don't really need that. You can see on our web page here, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit and you can see it kind of goes into 2 pages and the autopilot unfortunately will not click on that number 2 button for you. You have to do that work yourself. So that's another reason why you kind of need to pick and choose, you know, maybe what tools you may use based on the website itself. And we can talk in future maybe too about, you know, taking a look at websites, but in general for this specific task, we've been working on gathering information about coronavirus from all kinds of different, you know, Virginia institutions. And for me, because this is the second or third time I've been looking at this website, I see that there are a couple of new reports here. And again, when you start doing this on brand new websites, I would start from the very beginning and click on all of these different kind of stories that are on this page because we want to gather all of those. So what that looks like is
Lauren, how do
oh,
you
yeah.
know that there's new stuff on the website?
This is because I've been looking at the page, not because of any other indication or technical indication with WebRecorder. It's
Okay.
only because I've looked at the page. Yep, that's a good clarifying question. So because I've been collecting this page for the past couple of days, I've looked at it and I see that there are 2 new, and there's ways, that's a good question, Kara, because I can also go back when we're finished capturing this page and show you in the collection where these links are, so you can double check there. So for now, I'm going to show what happens when I go to collect new pages. So you can see up in the top here, the URL has changed to include this particular story, which they've designated with a code up the top. And we're still capturing, so I'm going to scroll down and look here. And again, depending on the website page that you're capturing, this may be a conversation that you want to talk about before you start capturing the web page, because there may be particular things that curators or the folks who are looking at the page would want you to capture. But here I know we mostly just want the news center. So for me, just getting this page is enough. There are some links here that do go out to things like to the Centers for Disease Control, and I'll click on that to show what happens. So you'll see now that it's changed to an entirely different URL because it's gone out to the Centers for Disease Control, just about some related information. So if you do that, the easiest way to navigate back to where you were is to simply click the back button. That's something that seems maybe a little bit counterintuitive if you're not sure if it'll take you out of WebRecorder, but it'll drop you right back into where you were. And for me, I know I was in the COVID-19 center, so I'm going to go back, and if you've been watching this left-hand side, you'll see that it'll keep increasing as it's gathering more data. And now I'm going to click on this newest story. And again, you'll see this URL has changed slightly. This is WebRecorder showing you that it's getting all of those particular links. And so I'm going to scroll down again. And since we're not using autopilot, yeah, make sure to kind of scroll down to the bottom, look around a little bit and see what you have here. Again, for this one, this mostly just looks like this is the main content that we want to capture. I'm not going to click on the appointment online. I think that's okay. And I think that's about it for now. This was the focus I wanted to have, so I'm going to stop. And when I click, all you have to do is hover over that button that shows it's recording and click stop. And now this looks a little more busy than yours will, because again, I've been collecting a bunch of different things, but I'm going to highlight these. What you can see here, sometimes it helps to look at the date. I know that we were recording those right now, so I see that these are all of the links that I clicked on for that particular web page today that we just captured. So all of these links are included in this collection. So I'm going to click on what's called pages here. And this includes every single thing that I have captured under this whole collection. And I want to show this first because this can start to look overwhelming, but these are simply just all of the pages that I had clicked on through links that I'd been assigned to capture. You can organize these based on, so I'm going to go back to our spreadsheet here. So an example of this is I've been looking at all of these media sites, and the way I've organized them in WebRecorder, you can see down on the left here, I've created what are called lists, and you can add particular URLs to particular lists. So everything that was WSLS, I've actually organized into a list, and I can show you how to do that really quickly. And again, a lot of these, no matter what you do, say you don't want to create lists or you're not sure, you just want to record URLs and then maybe, share those with people, that's okay too. For me, the lists have made it easier because I'm doing a lot of things at once. I'm a little more comfortable with WebRecorder right now. So it's perfectly okay just to leave everything in what is called pages currently, because it's all still captured under your collection. It will all be part of what's called a web archive file that you can then export out of WebRecorder. So don't worry about it if you don't necessarily want to do all this list action currently, but I will show you what that looks like for VCU. So I'm going to click on this top link here, which you see as vcuhealth.org. And this is where I've organized everything that I just clicked on. So you can see here, this was actually what the URL that we searched, and I put it into the description here, which you can always edit. I've named it based on what I thought was the best title, so this can also be updated if you, find yourself maybe wanting to name things differently. This for me is kind of more internal notes where I'm like, this was something that people are saying to go to this particular website, but it actually resolves to this, so this is what I was crawling. Again, that's totally up to you. Then when you organize things into lists, you can see here it only has VCU Health. So when you share this, or maybe if you're working with a colleague, this helps you kind of stay organized that, okay, everything VCU is under this particular list for that particular URL. And the way that you add things to lists is by something that makes it nice and easy. If I know that VCU, so I'm on the top right filtering now, if I know I just want VCU health because I'm putting it in that particular list, you can highlight them. And so I'm just going to take the ones I did today. So I'm pressing Command and highlighting. For some folks on, if you're on a PC, that might be something like Control. And then you can move those into that particular list, and it'll tell you how many links are in there now. And so now, if we scroll down to the bottom of that particular VCU list, you'll see the ones that we crawled today. Again, you still have those no matter what. It's still in your total page count. This is just a way of redirecting and creating a kind of narrowed down granular list for that particular URL. I'm going to pause for a minute because I've been talking a lot and ask if there are any questions that have come up for folks. Or maybe I'll look at the questions. Standard naming convention. Okay, so I see Kara has one in here. Not in WebRecorder, but in general, I would say WebRecorder right now, I think what we name things in there probably, and maybe Emily or Dan would want to correct me on this, but right now I don't think, as long as it is understandable to you and to folks that you may be sharing materials with, I think the bigger naming convention probably comes in the actual file sharing, where we have been doing very specific dates and name. So that may be something later that we may want to, but right now in WebRecorder, there's not a standard convention. Yeah, that's a good question. Anyone else have things that maybe have come up taking a look at this?
And if you don't have any lists created,
Mm-hmm.
it'll say like list 0, and then and then the little plus button will let you add it.
Yeah, let me go to one. Let's look at one where maybe I don't have any list created. All right, so here's one called Happy Fun Times. So I just switched collections there if you're looking at my screen. So this, because I have several collections, this is one I created for, doing things. So right now this looks a little different. So this is one where, yeah, this is an old one. So what they used to call these was called bookmarks, which was really just things that you've designated to share. But yeah, so it'll look more empty like this. And if I wanted to add a list or create a list, you just click the little button, and I could say, let's say in the library, because I see I had some. So now you'll see that pop up where there's now 2 lists. And if I want to add, let's see, the library lead pipe. So I could filter for that again. And I could select to add those particular ones to that list. Now let's see. So you'll see now, if you're looking at just in the library, it'll just show those links versus looking at every single page where we had said desk lunch and things like that. Now you'll notice that I mostly got things to that specific match. So there may be additional items that are related to that, like this one here, this Twitter site. I'm going to just drag and drop that in there because that's actually related to the in the library, but it had a different URL, so it didn't get captured in that filter I did. So that's one thing to keep an eye on when you're adding things to lists that are related. If you've maybe linked out to other sites, that's where the timestamp could be a really good fallback if you're putting things into lists. And so an example on that one we just looked at for VCU, I had gone out to that CDC website. So that's something that, I think the timestamp is a good way to do that. If you get everything that has that date and time, that's probably better than doing the filter for the URL to put things in a list. Let's see, how are we doing on time? 2:26. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about reviewing a crawl. I kind of did organizing into lists first there. So if I was reviewing a crawl, like the one we just did, That's really just going back through. Here, let me go back to our. Okay, so this one I just did, this VCU. Okay, let's say that we want to go look at this. So we just crawled it, and I want to go back through. So what you'll see now, so I'm not recording, but I'm kind of getting the same page. So you'll see now that this says browsing, which just means that it is now playing back what I just collected. And you'll have a couple of options here as you're walking through. If you're not happy with the capture, so say that you did something that didn't seem to turn up quite right, you can automatically just say, yeah, start capturing this again, which will launch you back into that capture mode. Or maybe you're okay with how it looks and there's just a couple of things that you notice that you didn't get the last time that you want to quote unquote patch. And what patching is kind of allowing you to add additions to that URL that you had captured. So say maybe I forgot to go click on that CDC link, or maybe I wanted to add something additional. Patching would kind of let, so you can see as I clicked on patching, it went back through and it's trying to kind of automatically go through. You can see here it's turning up on the right as patching. And so this is an attempt to go back through and maybe recapture things that maybe I missed the first time or that the crawler missed. You can see it's very small, it's in kilobytes, so there's really not a lot to quote unquote patch, but that's just what that terminology means. So since I did that, so you can see it's kind of turned up, not very much. So I'm going to go back. I kind of did that one twice. That's fine. So we're back to browsing. The other thing over here is a little eye, which is an informational view. So because we're browsing and not capturing, it's going to show me all of the available links in the collection as a whole. So that's where this browse all could be a little confusing. But if we go to lists, and I just want to view vcu.org, this will show me only the links within that list. And so there's ways that you can browse. You can either browse on the website itself, clicking around like you normally would, and kind of walking through that way. Let's see, read our FAQ. Do we have that? Yep. Well, on the left here, it'll kind of just be grayed out because it's, you're not clicking on those links there. The other option is that you could click on all of the available links that it's showing you in the list and review that way. Say, so here I'm clicking on the left and I'm going through and seeing all of these different links that we have captured. So this is me browsing, and we can see, so here's some formatting. From time to time, you may see something like this, where this is clearly some icons that have been blown up a little bit bigger than we would typically expect on a live website. I'm glad I clicked on this one because things like video and audio, currently it seems that if you run into something like this one, that you're like, this seems like really important information that maybe I should crawl or that I should have as part of this, you want to make sure you play that media. That's probably one of the biggest things with WebRecorder, that you want to go through. So you can see, so that's playing back on this kind of browsing capacity, because when I crawled this page, I sat and played that in real time. So that right now that I know of is the best way to capture a lot of these things. Sometimes if you don't have it replay in real time the whole way through, when you go back later and you look at it, it will not have captured or it will give you an error. I'm not exactly sure the technical reasons for that right now with WebRecorder, but I do recommend, if you encounter media that is germane, that is needed for the page that you're crawling, doing it in real time is your best bet to ensure the best capture. So for this one, for the one below, I think sometimes that's the way things stream. A lot of these are embedded from YouTube. So this just makes sure that we capture all of that on playback. So this one's similar, where, yeah.
Lauren, does it capture
Mhm.
like the advertisements and that sort of thing? And is there a way to skip that, or do you just have to accept it?
It depends. So sometimes, depending on the website, luckily a lot of these are mostly, academic sites right now, again, for this particular focus that we have. But there may be other things, student materials may be hosted on, more commercial websites or, things like WordPress where you could get served ads. Obviously, don't worry about clicking on those. That's not something that we're most interested in, the content that is related to the topic that we're really focused on. So for me, I'm going to show an example of this website. So if you haven't captured a URL, this is what you're going to find. And so here's that patch. If you do think that this is something important, you could patch it. But this is an example of something where for this particular collection, we're just focused on the COVID-19 section of this web page. So that's going to be something that, so like live the mission, these are all things that are part of this VCU health page that we're not really interested in right now per se as related to the coronavirus, kind of focus we have. So this is what will turn up when you're playing your materials back if you don't have it in the archive. And again, so if that's something you do think you should try to capture because it's related to the content that you're really focused on collecting based on the collection specifications that folks have given you, you can do this patch idea. But yeah, so that's what will come up there. Okay. So that's a little bit of the review within WebRecorder. Something that folks may have noticed, so always a good way to kind of jump back to your collection. Well, I guess I'll touch a little bit. So you can see here in this information in our browsing mode here, you can also see the metadata here, which a lot of times this is kind of automated. So you see this bookmark section here, that's taking really the top title of the page, and it's inserted it for you there. I haven't done any of these. These have mostly come probably from the structure of the web page itself, and WebRecorder has kind of given them bookmarks and given them titles here. So this is all generated by WebRecorder. It gives you an opportunity if you want to do page level description, which is highly unlikely given the volume of web pages. We would discourage that, but that is something that it allows you to do if you so choose. Okay, so the way I usually go back is just go to Collection Manager. So clicking on that will bring you back to the collection that you're in. You can also do kind of collection metadata. So similarly here to the left, I could give a little more information here if I so choose, but again, we're not worried about that right now. Another thing I wanted to highlight next to this collection cover, which is just kind of an icon that you could potentially insert if you so chose, or not an icon, but a kind of leading source, I think if you wanted to do that. Again, I'm not too worried about that for now. That's kind of an additional thing, but this public button here, so anybody can view this collection currently. I've set it to public, both so I can share it with folks at UVA. So if people are curious, and you wanted to look right now, I can drop this into the chat if I can find it. Nope, I'll drop it into the Google Doc. And so here is Lauren's public web recorder for this collection. So anybody's able to access it. This is useful for sharing maybe the work that you're doing with folks. People could browse through. This might be a step, in quality assurance later as we're all kind of working on different things, but just know for now that's an option. So if I'd set it to private, and folks may have noticed that some of my other collections were private, nobody, that link, anybody that has it in the public can find and access this collection. If I have it set to private, nothing is shared out publicly with anyone. It's all kind of, you'll see this on your back end, only on your administrator dashboard, which is kind of what this is like. Okay, so the other things I wanted to touch on, if you have any questions, so that's kind of our sharing section there. That's, public or private, you can share that with folks. The other way to share things is by downloading the actual digital file called a WARC, which is really just a big wrapper. So think of like something like a zip file where you can contain a lot of things within it. So what, web archives are made of are pretty much like a structured document that records all of the things, files, media, text and markup of websites, all just into one kind of container. So that's called a WARC. It's a standard. So the good thing about it being a standard is that we can use them in different tools interchangeably. So that's a really great thing about WARCs, is that you can use multiple tools to create them. Web Recorder is just one of those tools, and you can then use them in different systems, upload them, examine them in different ways. So that's why it's so good that there's so many people, kind of thinking about doing this work, is that we will be able to exchange the product of that work from Web Recorder. And the way that you can do that, and again, this is kind of a step beyond where we might be currently, but I thought it was good to highlight, is that you can say download collection. And what that will look like, I did this earlier, it will generate for you a file that looks, it'll be named, hold on, I'm dragging this over. It will, there we go. It'll look like this. It'll be named for the collection, and because this isn't, it's the size, it's reflecting the accurate size of the collection I have right now for UVA coronavirus, and I've saved this just as on my own desktop, but this is what the work looks like, and it's showing this WR player because that's what I have installed on my current machine to open and play work, so it's automatically assigning that. If you haven't ever opened a work on your machine, you're not going to see WR player because it's most likely going to ask you what you want to use to open that work. And I will show you what that is. Again, so this is kind of the step beyond. You've done your collection, you've gone through URLs, you've made sure it turns up what you want it to. Maybe you've made a list, maybe not. Either way, it's okay. You've been able to page through and kind of review like we just did. And this is kind of the additional step of downloading, and this is something we do for preservation, is making sure that we have a local copy of that file in another place, because Web Recorder is great. Their storage is in the cloud like everybody else. That's where your 5 gigabytes of storage comes from. They're storing your WARCs probably on Amazon, maybe on something else. But this allows you to download and have a local copy. And, for some steps in future, allows us to walk through what that actual WARC file looks like. So the tool that I use, and I would recommend folks use, because again, it is free to download, and it's also made by the same folks as Web Recorder. It's called Web Player. Let me see if I put a link in here. Nope. So Web Player is on the, and I realize we're running close to time. Wrong search, Lauren. This is what you want. Okay, so on the Web Recorder homepage, it's great when you stay logged in. The link also for downloading the Web Recorder player is there. It'll take you to this page. That's okay. This is a GitHub page, but that's where they list it. It's pretty easy to download. You go to the newest release, and for me, because I'm on an Apple, a Mac, I do the DMG, but they have EXEs for PCs. So once you download it, they've set it up so it's very straightforward to open and play. And again, this may be a little bit past where we are right now, and I'm happy to, maybe chat about this in future, but what it allows you to do, and I'll show that basically really quickly, is open up a WARC file so you can review it quote unquote offline. So this is the downloaded file that has all of that content that you had gathered from the live internet packaged it into a file, and made it playable without being connected to the internet. So this is a localized way of reviewing what you have collected and downloaded from those websites. So I'm going to drop this into the chat here. So here's the web player, or not to the chat, but here. Okay, so I'm going to pause again because I've been talking a lot again, and just ask if there are any additional questions, or if anybody has tried to get an account to set up and has been playing around with it and had any questions. And okay, yes, I've seen this other question from Emily saying it was answered. Okay, yep. Yeah, anything else that's come up for folks, either in my yakking or when you've looked at anything yourself? We can always, if you have follow-up questions too, if you like haven't had a minute to do any of this because you've been focused on understandably 8 million other things, you can always email me as well and follow up. And we'll make this recording available as well.
Lauren, I just wanted to mention really quickly, you talked a little bit about being able to download the work.
Yes.
And yes, at some point we will be wanting to gather all of that content together. As I think you and I have both experienced, as we're all working remotely, trying to deposit those files together has caused a little bit of trouble for some of us at this point.
Yes.
So I would just tell people, maybe don't worry a whole lot about that step right now. And we will get there later. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. You know, depending on your connection at home, don't even worry about this kind of downloading of the works. Just wanted to highlight it as a component of what your final product may look like. But yeah, this kind of initial creating, crawling, reviewing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely focus on that for now, and feel free to explore, you know, with your, if you have your account set up, maybe find a website and try to work on it, or you know, maybe you'll have some things asked of you in the next couple of days. But yeah, we can also gather again. You know, this is really just kind of an ad hoc intro that I wanted to throw together because I know folks have different experience. So we can always come back and have a troubleshooting session. We can think about, you know, maybe there's things that you guys have discovered that I didn't, you know about and want to build on. I also put some more resources down at the bottom here. Some are, one is a Confluence page and a login's required, but there's other just kind of reference things. The International Internet Preservation Consortium has a lot of really good getting started, like what the heck is, you know, web archiving, if you've never had to delve into this before, that kind of stuff. So those resources are there on the page as well. Yeah, well, I know we're a little bit over, and I'm sure, you know, folks are very busy. So I'm going to end the recording here really quick. So I'm going to stop share, and then